The third-floor maternity ward of Metropolitan General hummed with the quiet, rhythmic machinery of new life, beeping monitors, the gentle hiss of oxygen, the soft, exhausted sighs of mothers, and the fainter, breathy cries of their infants. It was a world sealed in a bubble of pastel pink and blue, a sanctuary of beginnings. And its guardian was head nurse Anya Sharma. She moved through the halls with an economy of motion that bordered on severe. No wasted steps, no idle gestures. Her dark hair was pulled back in a knot so tight it seemed to pull at the corners of her eyes, making her gaze permanently intense. To the younger nurses, she was a specter of impossible standards. To the patients, a reassuring, if distant, presence of absolute competence. To Dr. Mark Evans, chief of obstetrics, she was a thorn in his side. "Another drill, Anya?" he asked, catching her as she updated the emergency evacuation routes on a whiteboard near the nurses' station. He leaned against the counter, a casual arrogance in his posture. "We just had one last month." "Hospital policy is quarterly," she replied, without looking up from her work. Her voice was flat, devoid of inflection. "We were overdue." "It's maternity," he chuckled, a dismissive wave of his hand encompassing the entire floor. "The most dangerous thing that happens up here is a father fainting in the delivery room. You run this place like it's a forward operating base." Anya stopped writing. She placed the cap back on the dry erase marker with a definitive click. She turned to face him. Her eyes, a deep, unreadable brown, met his. "The Joint Commission doesn't make exceptions for perceived safety, Dr. Evans." "Perceived safety?" he scoffed. "We're on the third floor, locked access, security downstairs. What do you think is going to happen? Pirates swing in through the windows?" "I think in an emergency, the first casualty is the plan you thought you had," she said. "So we drill until the response is muscle memory. That way, no one has to think. They just act." "Right." He pushed off the counter, shaking his head with a patronizing smile. "Well, don't let me get in the way of your war games. Just try not to scare the new mothers." He walked away, his laughter echoing softly in the quiet hall. Anya watched him go, her expression unchanged. She picked up the marker again. She drew a new line, a secondary fallback point from the nursery to the reinforced utility corridor at the west end of the wing. A place with no windows, one entrance, solid steel door. Anya Sharma didn't believe in pirates. She believed in bad men. And she knew that bad men didn't care what floor you were on. The first sign of trouble was not an alarm. It was a sound that didn't belong. A muffled pop, pop, pop from far below. Distant, almost dismissible, like a car backfiring in the street outside. But Anya froze, her head tilted, a predator sensing a shift in the wind. A junior nurse, Chloe, looked up from her charting. "Did you hear that?" Anya was already moving. She walked to the central desk, her steps quick but not hurried. She pressed the intercom button for the security desk in the main lobby. Silence. She pressed it again. Static answered. That was the second sign. A scream echoed up the central stairwell then, thin and terrified. It was cut short. Chloe's eyes went wide. Panic began to bloom on her face. What was that? Anya met her gaze. Her own face was a mask of utter calm. "Chloe, go to the East Wing. Tell Nurse Davis to begin the quiet protocol. No questions. Just do it." The quiet protocol was one of Anya's creations. It was the one Dr. Evans had mocked the most. It involved dimming hallway lights, turning off all televisions and radios in patient rooms, and silencing non-critical monitor alarms, switching them to visual-only alerts at the central station. It was a protocol for making the entire ward seem empty. Abandoned. Chloe hesitated, her fear a visible tremor. Now, Anya's voice was not loud, but it cut through the rising panic like a scalpel. The girl nodded and ran. Then the overhead lights flickered once, twice, and went out, plunging the ward into the dim, emergency-only glow of the battery-powered exit signs. A robotic female voice crackled over the PA system. Code Silver. Code Silver. Lockdown is in effect. This is not a drill. The bubble had burst. The outside world, in all its brutality, had found its way in. Anya moved to the double doors that separated maternity from the main elevator bank. They were heavy, fire-rated doors, but their locks were standard commercial grade. She looked at the magnetic lock, its small green light now dark. Power cut. No magnetic lock. She grabbed a wheeled, heavy-duty linen cart and wedged its rubber wheels under the push bars, creating a crude but effective barricade. It wouldn't stop a determined push, but it would make noise. It would buy time. Time was everything. Dr. Evans came rushing out of a patient's room, his face pale in the eerie red light of an exit sign. "What the hell is going on, Sharma? The power's out. The phones are dead." "Code Silver, Doctor," Anya said, her hands already working to unspool a fire hose from its cabinet on the wall. "Active shooter." "In the hospital?" He sounded incredulous. "They're on the second floor now," she said. It wasn't a guess. She had counted the seconds between the first pops and the scream. She had listened to the quality of the echo in the stairwell. She knew their approximate speed of ascent. "How can you possibly know that?" he demanded. Because that's where pharmacy is," she replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "They secured the ground floor and the exits. Now they'll go for the drugs. Then they'll keep moving up to create distance from the police response." She was dragging the heavy hose now, not toward the fire doors, but toward the stairwell entrance. "What are you doing with that?" he hissed, his voice a strained whisper. "Creating a barrier. That's insane. We need to get the patients. We need to evacuate." "We have 12 mothers on this ward," Anya stated, her back to him. 6 are post-op C-section. They cannot move. 4 are in active labor. The nursery has 15 newborns, 3 in incubators. Evacuation is not an option. Not a question. A statement. Her finality was absolute. "So, what's your brilliant plan?" Evans shot back, his fear turning to anger. "We just sit here and wait for them to come up and—" "What?" Anya straightened up, the hose laid out in a precise configuration on the floor. She turned to him, and in the dim, bloody light, he saw something in her eyes he had never seen before. It wasn't fear. It was an utter, chilling absence of it. "They are the ones who should be afraid of coming up here," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it held the weight of a promise. The sounds from below grew louder. The sharp crack of rifle fire, not the muffled pops of handguns. Shouts, more screams. They were methodical, clearing the second floor. Anya knew what that meant. These were not junkies after a pharmacy score. This was a team. They moved with purpose. She moved back to the nurse's station, her mind a cold engine of calculation. Layout of the floor, choke points, available assets. She saw the ward not as a place of healing, but as a battle space. The long central corridor was a fatal funnel. The L-shaped intersections provided cover and ambush points. The patient rooms were defensible positions. "Chloe," she said into her shoulder-mounted walkie, a piece of personal gear she insisted her staff carry during drills, another point of mockery for Evans. "Status," the radio crackled. "Lights are down. Patients are quiet. We moved the mothers from the rooms by the stairwell into the central rooms, like the protocol said." "Good. Stay there. Barricade the door to your wing with the beds. Do not open it for any reason. Do you understand?" "What if it's the police?" Chloe's voice was a tiny thread of hope. "The police will not use the East Wing stairwell. They will come from the west, or the elevators. Anyone at your door is not a friend. Acknowledge." "Acknowledged," Chloe whispered. Anya turned to the other two nurses and the single orderly huddled behind the desk. "You three, get the crash carts. All of them." "What for?" the orderly asked, his eyes wide with terror. "We're building a wall," Anya said. Dr. Evans stared at her as if she had lost her mind. "A wall? With crash carts? They have guns." "They have guns," Anya agreed calmly. "We have cover. Go." Her authority was now absolute. The fear in the room was a tangible thing, a cold fog, but her calm was a beacon in it. They scrambled to obey. She directed them to arrange the heavy metal carts in a staggered line across the main corridor, just past the turn from the stairwell doors. It wasn't a solid wall, but it broke up lines of sight. It created a maze. "IV poles," she commanded next. "Take them all out of the rooms. Lay them on the floor behind the carts." "To trip them?" Evans asked, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "To make noise," she corrected, "and to channel them." She was creating a path, a specific path she wanted them to take. A heavy thud echoed from the stairwell door, then another. They were here. "Dr. Evans," Anya's voice was low, intimate. "I need you. I need you to get every canister of compressed oxygen you can find. The small, portable ones." "Why?" "Get them," she repeated. "Bring them to the West Corridor intersection. And bring a flare gun from the rooftop emergency kit." He stared. "A flare gun? How do you even know that's there?" "Because I read every safety and fire plan for this entire building," she said. "Now is not the time for questions, Doctor. It's time to trust that I know what I'm doing." He looked from her impossibly calm face to the shuddering stairwell door. He made a choice. He nodded, a sharp, jerky motion, and ran to do as he was told. The lock on the stairwell door splintered. The door swung open with a deafening bang. Silence. They were waiting. Assessing. Anya flattened herself against the wall in an alcove, just out of sight of the doorway. She held a heavy, stainless steel bedpan in her hand. It was a pathetic weapon, but she wasn't planning on using it as one. The first man came through the door. He was dressed in black tactical gear, a rifle held at the ready. He moved low and fast. A second man followed, covering the opposite angle. They saw the dimly lit, silent corridor. They saw the bizarre wall of medical carts. It was unexpected. It made them pause. That was all Anya needed. From her hiding spot, she hurled the bedpan. It flew down the hall, away from her position, clattering loudly against the far wall of the corridor. Instinct took over. Both men flinched, their rifles swinging toward the noise. In that split second of distraction, Anya moved. She exploded from the alcove. She wasn't a nurse. She was a blur of motion. She didn't target the first man. She targeted the second, the rear guard. Her path was a straight line. She slammed her shoulder into the side of his knee. Bone and cartilage gave way with a wet crunch. The man screamed, his leg buckling as he went down. His rifle discharged, a deafening burst of automatic fire that ripped into the ceiling, raining down plaster and dust. The first man was already turning back, his eyes wide with shock behind his goggles. He was fast. Anya was faster. She was already inside his guard. Her left hand shot out, grabbing the barrel of his rifle, forcing it upward and away. Her right hand, fingers rigid like a spear, drove hard into the soft tissue of his throat. He gagged, a strangled, choking sound. She did not stop. She used his momentum as he recoiled, twisting his weapon, wrenching it from his grasp, with a brutal efficiency that spoke of thousands of hours of practice. The rifle was in her hands now. She brought the stock up hard under his chin. His head snapped back. His eyes rolled up. He collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. It had taken less than 4 seconds. The nurse and the orderly, peeking from behind the crash carts, stared in silent, horrified awe. The man on the floor with the shattered knee was trying to reach for his sidearm. Anya calmly ejected the magazine from the captured rifle, cleared the chamber, and then swung the weapon like a club, a single precise blow to the side of his head. He went still. Silence returned. Anya stood in the middle of the corridor, breathing evenly, the rifle held loosely in her hands. She was no longer Anya Sharma, head nurse. She was someone else entirely. A ghost. Dr. Evans returned, dragging a small cart loaded with green oxygen canisters. He skidded to a halt, his eyes taking in the scene. 2 armed men, clad in tactical gear, neutralized on the floor, and Anya, holding an assault rifle. His mouth opened, but no words came out. "Are those all of them?" Anya asked, her voice unchanged. He just nodded dumbly. "Good." She propped the captured rifle against the wall. She had no intention of using it. It was loud. It would give away their position and their capabilities. She preferred the element of surprise. "There are more," she said. "Probably 3 more. A 5-man team is standard for this kind of infiltration." Who? What are you?" Evans finally managed to stammer. "Right now, I'm the person keeping our patients alive," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Help me with him." She pointed to the unconscious man. Together, they dragged him behind the nurse's station. She used a roll of medical tape to bind his hands and feet with a practiced, intricate knot he'd never seen before. "The other one," she pointed to the man with the broken leg. "He's our alarm system." She dragged the groaning man back into the stairwell and left him there. "They'll have to deal with him before they can advance," she explained. "It will slow them down, it will force them to communicate, and I'll hear it." She was thinking 3-4 steps ahead. This wasn't a panicked defense. It was a hunt. And she had just turned the tables. "What do we do now?" Evans asked. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a raw, desperate need for her to have a plan. "Now, we set the trap," she said. Picking up one of the small oxygen tanks, she showed him how to crack the valve just enough to create a slow, steady hiss. "Place them at 20-foot intervals down the west corridor," she instructed. "Behind the gurneys, in the alcoves. Make sure the hissing is audible." "You're filling the hallway with pure oxygen?" he asked, the medical implications dawning on him. "Just a low concentration," she said. "Not enough to be a problem on its own, but enough to be helpful." She held up the flare gun he'd brought. His eyes widened in horrified understanding. "You're insane," he breathed. "I'm pragmatic," she countered. "They think this is a soft target. We need to make them believe this is the most dangerous place in the world for them to be." From the stairwell, they heard new voices, angry, speaking in a language she recognized, Russian, a string of curses. Then a man barked an order. A single gunshot echoed in the concrete stairwell. Anya's face hardened. "They just executed their own man," she said softly. "To maintain speed. They're professionals." "Which means they won't fall for your tricks," Evans whispered, his newfound hope crumbling. "It means they will be predictable," she corrected. "Professionals rely on their training. They expect certain responses. We will give them something else entirely." A new sound, metal scraping on concrete. They were using a tool to bypass the barricade she'd made with the linen cart at the main fire doors. They were changing their approach vector. "Smart. They're coming down the main hall," Anya said. "They're avoiding the stairwell, assuming it's compromised." She grabbed the walkie. "Chloe, report. We hear them. They're outside the main doors." "Did you barricade the wing door as I instructed?" "Yes. 3 beds, and the supply cabinets." "Good girl. Stay quiet." Anya turned to Evans. "Your oxygen trap is now Plan B. We need to stop them before they get that far." She looked around the nurse's station. Her eyes landed on the defibrillator on the crash cart. A plan formed. Terrible. Dangerous. Perfect. "Give me the saline," she ordered. "Every bag you can find." The main doors groaned, then burst inward. 3 figures, silhouetted against the dim light from the elevator bank, entered the ward. They moved in a tight, triangular formation. Point man, 2 on flank. They saw the toppled carts, the scattered IV poles. They saw the body of their comrade near the stairwell. They advanced cautiously. The floor was strangely wet. It glistened in the beams of their weapon-mounted flashlights. The lead man paused, signaling a halt. He knelt, touching a gloved finger to the floor. Water? No. Saline solution. He looked up, his flashlight beam cutting a path through the darkness. The beam landed on Anya. She was standing 20 yards away, next to a crash cart. Alone. She wasn't wearing body armor, just her blue nursing scrubs. She held 2 metal paddles in her hands, connected by coiled wires to the machine beside her. The leader barked a laugh, a harsh, ugly sound. He raised his rifle. "Put that down, little nurse," he said in heavily accented English. "Clear," Anya said, her voice calm and steady. She pressed the button on the defibrillator. The machine whined, charging. A high-pitched, rising tone that filled the silent hallway. The 3 men exchanged confused looks. The leader took a step forward, into the widest part of the saline puddle. His boots were rubber-soled. He was safe. He didn't account for the IV poles. The metal IV poles. She'd had the staff scatter on the floor. The ones lying in the puddle of conductive saline solution. The ones that were now connected to every part of the floor he and his men were standing on. The machine beeped. "Fully charged," I said. "Put it down," the leader snarled, his aim settling on her chest. Anya met his gaze across the dark space. She pressed the 2 paddles together. A brilliant blue-white arc of electricity exploded between them. 360 joules of energy discharged, not into a patient, but down the wires, into the machine, and through the metal frame of the crash cart she had intentionally placed in the saline. The entire puddle, and everything metallic touching it, became a conductor. The 3 men convulsed, their bodies arched backward, muscles locking in a violent, brutal spasm. Their rifles clattered to the floor. They fell, twitching, their gear smoking. The smell of ozone and burnt hair filled the air. Anya lowered the paddles. The ward was silent again, save for the hum of the defibrillator as it began to recharge. Dr. Evans emerged from a side room, his face a mask of disbelief. He looked at the 3 men on the floor. He looked at the puddle of water. He looked at Anya. "My God," he breathed. "That shouldn't have worked." "It works if you understand conductance," Anya said, calmly placing the paddles back on the machine. "And if your enemy underestimates you." She walked past him, toward the downed men. She checked the first one, unconscious, breathing. The second, same. The third, the leader, was stirring, groaning. His name was Victor. She knew him. She knelt beside him, her face close to his. "Hello, Victor," she said softly. His eyes fluttered open. Recognition dawned, followed by pure, undiluted shock. "Anya!" he rasped, his voice fried from the jolt. "It cannot be. You were dead." "Reports were exaggerated," she said, her voice like ice. "Why are you here? Who is the target?" "The child," he coughed, a pained grimace on his face. "The politician's child. In the NICU. A message." Anya's blood ran cold. She had focused on defending the main ward, the mothers. She had assumed the NICU in its isolated corner was safe. It was a mistake, a rookie mistake. "Is there another team?" she demanded. He just smirked, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. That was her answer. Suddenly, the blare of sirens cut through the night. Close. Very close. The police had arrived, but for Anya, the fight wasn't over. It had just entered a new, more dangerous phase. The SWAT team breached the main doors minutes later. They moved in a wave of black armor and weaponry, expecting a firefight. They found a scene of bizarre, unnerving calm. The maternity ward was dimly lit and quiet. 5 armed intruders were unconscious, disarmed, and secured with medical tape and zip ties made from cut power cords. The nursing staff was huddled in the east wing, shaken but unharmed. The patients, including 15 infants, were safe. And in the center of it all stood a nurse in blue scrubs, calmly talking to a stunned-looking doctor. The SWAT team leader, a man named Sergeant Miller, lowered his rifle, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Ma'am," he said, his voice cautious, "can you tell me what happened here?" Anya looked at him. "There was a code silver. We implemented our emergency protocols." Miller stared at the neutralized gunman at his feet. "Your protocols include this?" "They were adapted to the situation," Anya said simply. Miller was a 20-year veteran of the force, a former Army Ranger. He'd seen a lot of things. He'd never seen anything like this. He noticed the way she stood. Not like a civilian. Her weight was perfectly balanced. Her hands were relaxed but ready. Her eyes were constantly scanning, assessing his team, the exits, the angles. He'd seen that stance before, in the desert, in the mountains, in places where survival was measured in seconds. He saw the way the first intruder had been taken down, the precise, brutal efficiency of it. A tracheal strike and a weapon disarm. Not a cop move, not a soldier's move. Something else. "Where did you learn to do that?" Miller asked, his voice lower now, a tone of professional respect creeping in. "I'm a nurse," Anya replied. "No," Miller said, shaking his head. "No, you're not. Not just a nurse." He walked over to where Victor lay, now conscious and glaring at Anya. Miller knelt. "Who are you people?" Victor spat on the floor. "Ask her. She was one of us." Miller looked back at Anya. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture he couldn't quite believe. "They had guns," Dr. Evans said, his voice shaky but firm. He stepped forward, placing himself slightly between Anya and the police. She had 12 patients who couldn't move, and she wasn't afraid. That was the core of it. The impossible truth. She wasn't afraid. Miller held up a hand to his team, signaling them to stand down. He approached Anya slowly. "I need a name," he said. "Not the one on your hospital ID." Anya remained silent for a long moment. The life she had built here, this quiet place of healing, was over. The ghost was out of the shadows. "My designation was Echo," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Unit 734. Miller's eyes went wide. He took an involuntary step back. Unit 734 didn't officially exist. It was a ghost story, a legend whispered among special operations communities, a black ops unit that handled problems no one else could. They were surgeons and assassins, spies and saboteurs. They were ghosts, and they were all supposed to be dead. Disavowed and dismantled after a mission in Damascus went catastrophically wrong 5 years ago. "Echo," Miller repeated, the name tasting like mythology on his tongue. "You were on the Damascus op." "I was the medic," she corrected, "and the last one out." "So this is what it feels like. The past catching up. It's not a flood. It's a quiet click, like a lock snapping shut. For 5 years I've been running. Not from them, not from men like Victor. From myself. From the woman who could stand over a man she once called a brother and feel nothing but the cold calculus of the threat he posed. I chose this place because it was the opposite of everything I knew. Life, not death. Beginnings, not endings. I thought I could wash the blood off by welcoming new souls into the world. I thought I could silence the ghosts of the fallen with the cries of the newborn. I was a fool. You can't erase what you are. You can only pretend. And the problem with pretending is that sooner or later, the real you is the only one who can save the day. The doors to the ward opened again. This time, it wasn't police. A man in a perfectly tailored dark suit walked in, flanked by two others, who had the same empty-eyed stillness as the intruders. He moved with an air of absolute authority, ignoring the police, ignoring the chaos. His eyes found Anya immediately. A faint, unreadable smile touched his lips. "Hello, Echo," he said. "It's been a long time." Anya felt a cold dread she hadn't felt when facing 5 gunmen. "Black," she said. Mr. Black, her former handler, the man who pulled the strings for Unit 734, the man who had sent them to Damascus, the man who had left them there to die. "I see you haven't lost your touch," he said, gesturing to the neutralized intruders. "Victor always was a loose cannon. I knew if he ever surfaced, he'd eventually lead me to you." "He wasn't looking for me," Anya said. "He was after a child." A convenient excuse, Black dismissed. "He was obsessed with you. With what happened, he believed you betrayed them." "You betrayed us?" Anya's voice was low and venomous. "You set us up. That intel was bad. You knew it was an ambush." Black's smile didn't falter. "The mission had acceptable losses. You, however, were not an acceptable loss. You were my best asset. When you disappeared, it was inconvenient." Sergeant Miller stepped forward. "Sir, this is a police crime scene. I'm going to have to ask you to identify yourself." Black didn't even look at him. He pulled a small leather wallet from his jacket and flipped it open to one of his men, who showed it to Miller. Miller looked at the credentials. His face went pale. He took a step back and silently motioned for his team to clear the way. The authority Black carried was on a level Miller couldn't touch. "This entire incident is now a matter of national security," Black announced to the room. "My team will handle it from here. The police will create a perimeter. There will be a story for the press, a gas leak, a chemical spill, something plausible." He turned his full attention back to Anya. "You and I are going to have a conversation." "I have nothing to say to you," Anya said. "I think you do," Black countered. "You see, you've become a problem. A ghost who refuses to stay dead. A loose end. And I detest loose ends." This was the choice. The one she had been running from. She could disappear again. Try to find another quiet corner of the world to hide in. But they would always be hunting her now. They knew she was alive, or she could fight. Right here. Right now. "You can't just make this go away," Anya said, her voice gaining strength. "There are witnesses, doctors, nurses, police officers. They all saw what happened. They saw what I did." "Witnesses can be managed," Black said with a shrug. "Stories can be changed. People can be convinced they saw something else." "Not him," Anya said, nodding toward Dr. Evans. "He won't be managed." Evans, who had been watching in stunned silence, straightened his shoulders. "She's right," he said, his voice ringing with newfound conviction. "That woman saved the lives of nearly 30 people tonight. She did it when we were all frozen in fear. Whatever she is, whatever she was, tonight, she was a hero, and I will not be silent about that." Black looked at Evans with a flicker of annoyance, the way one might look at an insect. "You have no idea what you're involving yourself in, Doctor." "I know that I work in a hospital," Evans shot back, "and the first rule here is do no harm. Your world, whatever it is, seems to have forgotten that rule. Her world, tonight, upheld it." Anya felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. She had an ally. She wasn't just a ghost anymore. She was head nurse Anya Sharma, and this was her floor. "You're not taking me, Black," Anya said. "It wasn't a plea. It was a declaration. You're not burying this, and you're not burying me." "And how do you plan to stop me?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Because you need me," she said. "Victor is not the only one. The rest of our unit that survived Damascus, they're out there, and they hate you more than they hate anyone. They are trained killers, and you are their primary target. Victor was just the first to get sloppy. The others won't be. Black's face tightened. She had hit a nerve. You think you're the only one who can hunt them? He scoffed. I'm the only one they might listen to, she replied. And I'm the only one who knows how they think. You can send your teams of sterile government thugs after them. They'll eat them for breakfast. Or you can use the person who was in the dirt with them, the one who patched them up and fought beside them. This was the negotiation. Not for her freedom, for her terms. What do you want? Black asked, his voice a low growl. A new unit, Anya said. Mine. I will run it. I will choose the members. We won't be your assassins or your spies. Our mission will be one thing, and one thing only: protection. We will use our skills to defend soft targets like this one. Hospitals, schools, places the wolves always see as full of sheep. You want me to fund a private security force for you? He laughed. I want you to fund a solution to 2 of your problems, Anya corrected. It gives your rogue ghosts a new purpose, a way to come in from the cold under my command. And it stops them from coming after you. And in return, the government gets a specialized unit uniquely qualified to handle the threats that are coming, the ones that don't play by the rules. She was offering him a deal he couldn't refuse, a way to turn his greatest failure into a new asset. Black was silent for a long time. He looked at the carnage she had wrought, at the loyalty she had inspired in the doctor, at the unyielding steel in her eyes. She was not the same asset he had lost 5 years ago. She was more. The Sanctuary Protocol, he said, a name forming in his mind. A good name for it. He had agreed. Anya allowed herself a single, slow breath. She had won. She had not run. She had not hidden. She had confronted the ghosts of her past and forged them into a shield for the future. 6 months later, Anya stood not in a hospital ward, but in a state-of-the-art training facility, the Sanctuary. Across from her stood a dozen people: doctors, nurses, former soldiers, and 2 of the rogue agents from her old unit, whom she had successfully tracked down and recruited. Dr. Evans was there, his official title now head of medical integration for the program. He had quit his prestigious job the day after the attack. The first thing you have to understand, Anya said, her voice echoing in the vast training space, is that protocol is a suggestion. It's a starting point. When the worst happens, you throw the book away, and you use what is in this room. She gestured around them. And what is in this room? Your mind, your environment, and the will to protect the person next to you. She was no longer hiding in the light. She was no longer a ghost in the shadows. She was the guardian at the gate, the one who knew the monsters because she had once walked among them. She had integrated the 2 halves of her life, the trained killer and the dedicated healer, into something new, something powerful. She was not Echo. She was not Nurse Sharma. She was just Anya. And she was finally, truly unafraid.